Okay, ready to really dive into prepping for this leather laboratory technician interview.
Absolutely. It's going to be fun.
Let's help our listeners get ready to analyze those interview questions like a pro.
I think one of the most important things is, you could know your stuff, right? Like you can know all about the chemicals and the testing and everything.
Mm.
Can you convey that? Can you convey your passion?
Mm.
And I think one of the first questions that you'll likely get is, what inspired you to pursue a career as a leather laboratory technician?
Ooh, that's a good one. See, I can already see how someone would sort of freeze up because it seems so simple, right? You're
Mm.
like, well, I've got like years of experience. How do I distill that into an answer?
You have so much experience. This is your chance to really showcase what's that why behind your resume.
Mhm.
Was there a specific leather good that sparked your interest? Were you like, man, that saddle is beautiful. I need to know how they made it so perfect, or those hiking boots lasted me forever. What's the secret? Was it that? Or maybe just like the science behind materials, ensuring that quality is top notch.
Yeah.
Whatever it was, make it personal.
So instead of just saying, I like chemistry, it's about connecting that to the real world.
Exactly. Were you fascinated by the chemical processes in tanning? The different finishes and how they affect the durability?
Uh-huh.
That's the stuff. And if you can, throw in a little story. That always makes it memorable.
It's like a good story. That's what people connect with. This is where I think RoleCatcher comes in handy. Like their AI can analyze job descriptions, be like, hey, look for these skills and help you really pinpoint what to emphasize in your answer, right?
Absolutely. Let's say the job description really emphasizes quality control.
Okay.
You could talk about a time you messed up an experiment. Yeah. And then highlight what you learned from that and how it made you even more detail-oriented.
It's like having a secret weapon to decode what the interviewers really want.
Precisely. Okay, let's say they throw this at you. How do you ensure the accuracy and consistency of your test results?
Ooh,
Well,
getting into the nitty-gritty. I'm imagining this is where like having a system, right? Like a process is really
Mhm.
key.
Absolutely. This is where you shine as that methodical, detail-oriented person. So start by outlining how you approach equipment calibration.
Okay.
Do you follow a strict schedule? Do you meticulously document all the calibration data? Tell them about it.
And what about those environmental factors, right?
Yes,
That can really mess things up.
absolutely.
Temperature, humidity.
Totally. Mention those. How do you control those variables? Do you have a special room?
Right.
Is there an air purifier? Tell them. And then, of course, talk about your record keeping.
Yeah.
How do you log those measurements? How do you make sure that data is secure?
Because nothing says hire me like a beautiful organized lab notebook.
Yeah.
But what about staying current? Because, you know, I imagine the leather industry, there are always new technologies and methods popping up.
All the time. And they're going to ask you about it. How do you stay up to date with the latest and greatest in leather testing? They want to know you're engaged.
So it's not enough to just be like, oh, I read some magazines sometimes.
Not quite. This
Yeah.
is where you break out the big guns.
Go ahead.
Professional organizations.
Okay.
Are you part of like the Society of Leather Technologists and Chemists? Do you go to their conferences? Any workshops or webinars? Let them know.
Show them you're on top of it.
Exactly.
Okay, so you've shown them you're up to date. But speaking of challenges, what about safety?
Yes,
Labs can be tricky.
absolutely. When they ask, how do you ensure your safety and the safety of others in the lab? They want more than just, I know where the fire extinguisher is.
Right.
They want to see that safety is ingrained in you.
So it's about going beyond just the basics like, oh, I wear my PPE.
Yes. While PPE is super important, mention it, but then go deeper. Talk about chemical handling, specific procedures you follow.
Okay.
Are you familiar with safety data sheets,
Mm-hmm.
waste disposal,
Right.
all those nitty-gritty details?
Oh, and what about emergency procedures? I feel like that's a big one.
Huge. Knowing how to react under pressure is crucial.
Yeah.
So highlight your familiarity with those protocols,
Mhm.
whether it's a chemical spill, administering first aid, evacuation plans. This is also where you can mention those specific regulations, like OSHA. Really shows you're serious.
Like you're not just following the rules, but you're helping create that environment of safety.
Exactly. Now, what if you get those test results back and they're completely unexpected?
Mhm.
They might ask, how do you handle unexpected results, those deviations?
That's the like the dreaded curveball question.
It is. But this is your time to shine. This is where you show them you can think on your feet and solve problems. So instead of panicking, emphasize that systematic approach you take.
So walk me through it. What are those steps?
First, I always double-check my procedure. Did I follow it exactly?
Right.
Then I take a look at the equipment. Was it calibrated correctly? Any malfunctions?
Okay.
And of course, analyze that raw data. Are there any weird inconsistencies in there?
So it's like being a detective, but for leather.
I love that. And just like a good detective, you don't jump to conclusions.
Right.
You gather all that evidence, analyze it carefully, and then, and only then, do you form a hypothesis.
And sometimes that means going back and doing even more tests.
Absolutely. It's all about showing them you can think critically, troubleshoot effectively, and stay calm under pressure.
And speaking of pressure, how about that question about confidentiality? Data security is a big deal these days.
It is, and they will ask about it. So when they ask, how do you ensure the confidentiality and security of all that sensitive data in the lab? It's about more than just locking your filing cabinet.
Right.
You want to convey that mindset of data protection.
Okay, so how do you paint that picture of a secure data fortress?
Start with how you understand those data storage protocols. Are you using encrypted servers, password protection, all of that?
Okay.
Just as important, highlight those data access procedures. Who can see this sensitive stuff?
Right, who has authorization?
Exactly. You're basically saying, I'm a responsible steward of this valuable data.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to mention specific regulations like GDPR, especially if the role involves, handling personal data. Shows you're thinking big picture.
Absolutely. So you're not just tech savvy, but you're also ethically responsible.
Now, before we move on, I want to touch on something you mentioned earlier, RoleCatcher's AI feedback. How does that work exactly?
It's so helpful. So let's say you're practicing this whole data confidentiality answer.
Right.
You can actually record yourself on RoleCatcher, and their AI analyzes not just what you say, but how you say it.
So it's like having a little speech coach, but for interviews.
Exactly. It picks up on things like filler words. Are you saying, too much?
Right.
Your pace, your tone, and it gives you feedback. It'll even suggest stronger ways to say things.
Oh, wow. It's like having a secret weapon to help you refine those interview skills.
Totally.
Now let's dive into another critical aspect of lab work, teamwork.
Yes. Because labs are rarely solo endeavors.
Right.
You've got to play nice with others to get those experiments done. When they inevitably ask, how do you collaborate with your team in the lab? This is your time to shine. It's about showing them that you not only work with others, but you thrive in that kind of environment.
Okay, so how do you convey that?
Give them examples. Talk about a successful project where teamwork was essential.
Mm-hmm.
What was your role? How did you communicate effectively with your colleagues?
So paint that picture of you being a team player.
Exactly. Okay, now imagine you're in the hot seat and they hit you with this. How do you prioritize competing demands and deadlines in a fast-paced lab setting?
Oh, that's the one where you got to show them you can juggle those beakers, right?
Yeah.
Like literally and figuratively.
Yeah, because there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
So how do you show them that you're a master juggler, even when the deadlines are looming and the experiments are demanding your attention?
It's all about that system, right?
Oh, yeah?
Maybe you use a prioritization matrix, ranking tasks by urgency and importance. Or maybe you're a visual person. To-do lists, project management tools, whatever works for you, but make it clear you've got a plan.
Right. You don't just fly by the seat of your pants in the lab.
Definitely not.
And don't forget about communication, because even the best laid plans can go haywire, especially in a lab setting.
Oh, 100%. This is where you showcase those proactive communication skills. Do you keep your supervisor in the loop about your progress? What about potential delays or roadblocks? All right, are you letting your team know what's going on? It's about showing you're a team player, not just a taskmaster. Now, before we go too far, I wanted to circle back to something you mentioned earlier, RoleCatcher's AI-powered job description analysis. How does that play into these behavioral questions?
It's amazing, actually. Let's say that job description really emphasizes adaptability.
Okay.
RoleCatcher's AI can pick up on that and then, bam, it suggests relevant behavioral questions like, tell me about a time you had to adapt to a new technology or procedure.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah.
So you're not just prepping for generic questions. You're anticipating the specific things that this employer is looking for.
Exactly. And then it can even analyze your responses. Like, did you give a strong enough example? Did you highlight the right skills? It's wild.
It's like having a personal interview coach in your pocket. Seriously.
Totally.
Now, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about a question that I think kind of trips people up. What about salary expectations?
Ooh, yeah. That one's always a bit of a tightrope walk, isn't it? You want to get paid what you're worth, but you also don't want to scare them off.
Right, you've got to find that sweet spot.
Exactly.
So any tips on how to handle that one?
Well, before you even step into the interview room, do your homework. Research salary ranges for similar roles in your area. Websites like Glassdoor, Salary.com, those are your friends.
Okay, good to know.
And don't forget to factor in your own experience, your education, any special skills or certifications you have.
Right, know your worth.
Exactly. Once you've got that range in mind, practice how you're going to say it, confidently and professionally. Don't just blurt out a number, give them a range and emphasize that you're open to negotiation.
So it's more about having a conversation, right?
Mhm.
Like you're both trying to find a number that works.
Exactly. Transparency is key.
Okay, good to know. Now let's talk about something that often gets overlooked. Body language.
Oh, yes. Your body speaks volumes even before you say a word.
Right. It's not just about what you say, but how you say it.
100%. First and foremost, eye contact. You don't want to stare them down, but you also don't want to be looking at your shoes the whole time.
Right. Find that balance.
Exactly. And for goodness sake, sit up straight. Posture is everything. You want to look confident, engaged, not slumped over like you're about to fall asleep.
I've been guilty of that, I'll admit it.
And when you shake their hand, make it firm, like you mean business. It's all about making a good first impression.
Right, from the moment you walk into the room.
Yeah.
Now, I know we've covered a ton today, but before we wrap up this interview prep session, I wanted to touch on something you mentioned earlier, the challenges and rewards of this job.
Absolutely.
Let's give our listeners a realistic look behind the scenes,
Sure.
What are some of the challenges that someone in this role might face?
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges is the meticulous nature of the work. Leather testing, it requires a lot of precision, patience, and attention to detail. It's not for everyone.
So if you're someone who thrives on constant action and variety, this might not be the best fit.
You're right, it's not the most fast-paced environment.
Right.
But for those who find satisfaction in that meticulous work, who enjoy solving puzzles, who are driven by quality and accuracy, it can be incredibly rewarding.
So it's about finding that sweet spot,
Yeah.
right? The right personality for the job.
Exactly. And the rewards, they're there. The leather industry is constantly evolving, so there's always something new to learn, new technologies, new challenges.
This is not stagnant by any means.
Oh, not at all. There's plenty of room to grow, to specialize, to really become an expert in your niche.
That's so cool. And let's not forget the satisfaction of working with such a tangible, natural material.
Absolutely. Leather has been used for centuries.
Mhm.
And as a leather laboratory technician, you're part of that legacy, ensuring its quality and longevity.
You're part of something bigger than yourself. I love that. Now let's switch gears a bit and talk about some of the skills and qualities that are essential for success in this field. What do people need to really thrive as a leather laboratory technician?
Well, first and foremost, a strong foundation in science is crucial. Chemistry, biology, material science, these are all essential for analyzing leather, understanding its properties, and conducting those tests.
So it's not just about loving leather, it's about loving science too.
Absolutely. But it's not all test tubes and beakers. Those soft skills, they're equally important.
Ah, yes, the soft skills, always so important, but sometimes overlooked. What are some of the key ones for aspiring leather laboratory technicians?
Communication is huge. You'll be working with all sorts of people, suppliers, manufacturers, designers, and you'll need to be able to explain complex technical stuff in a way that everyone understands.
So you're like a leather ambassador, bridging the gap between the science and the art.
I like that. And of course, problem-solving skills. Things don't always go according to plan in the lab, so you need to be able to think critically, analyze data, and come up with solutions on the fly.
It's like you're a leather detective.
Ah, love it. And finally, attention to detail, that's a big one. Leather testing requires a lot of precision and accuracy, so a methodical, detail-oriented approach is non-negotiable.
Because one little mistake in the lab could have a ripple effect throughout the entire supply chain, right?
Exactly. Now, for those who are just starting to explore the world of leather technology, are there resources, places they can go to learn more?
Yeah, it's like, where do you even begin? It can feel a bit overwhelming.
There are actually some fantastic resources out there. The Leather and Hide Council of America is a great starting point. They have a wealth of information on everything leather. Production, sustainability, industry trends, you name it.
It's like a leather encyclopedia.
Exactly. And if you're specifically interested in the science side, the Society of Leather Technologists and Chemists is the place to be. They offer certifications, technical publications, and a global network of leather experts.
It's like the ultimate leather club.
Pretty much. And don't underestimate the power of just reaching out to people working in the field. Connect on LinkedIn, go to industry events, or even see if a local tannery or leather goods manufacturer offers tours or shadowing opportunities.
That's such a good idea. Sometimes the best way to learn is by seeing firsthand, right?
Absolutely. And speaking of getting involved, let's talk about the importance of networking.
Ah, yes, networking.
Mm,
It's not just about awkward small talk and collecting business cards, right?
definitely not. Networking in the leather industry is about building genuine connections with people who share your passion. It's about supporting each other and celebrating this incredible material.
It's about building a community.
Exactly. Going to conferences, joining professional organizations, even connecting online. These are all ways to build your network, stay informed, and learn from each other.
It's like creating a web of leather-loving connections. I love that.
Exactly.
Now, are there any other resources that you recommend for interview preparation specifically? Like, are there websites or books that you found particularly helpful?
In addition to those organizations, online platforms are your friend. Websites like Indeed, Glassdoor, LinkedIn, they have a ton of information. Company reviews, salary data, even sample interview questions for leather laboratory technician roles.
Oh, wow. So you can get a real feel for the types of questions they might ask.
Exactly. And don't forget about your own network. Reach out to friends, family, former colleagues who might work in the industry. They might have some insider tips or advice.
Sometimes the best advice comes from people who know you best.
Absolutely. Okay, let's switch gears one last time and talk about what not to do. What are some common pitfalls to avoid in a leather laboratory technician interview?
Okay, let's talk about those cautionary tales, things to watch out for.
One of the biggest ones I see is people not being prepared for that salary question.
Oh, that one always sneaks up on people, doesn't it?
It does. And it's natural to feel a bit uncomfortable talking about money, but it's going to come up, so be ready.
So how do you strike that balance?
Research is key, like we talked about earlier. Know your worth, but also be realistic. And when you do talk about salary, be confident, be professional, and be open to negotiation.
Okay, good advice. What else?
Another common mistake I see is people forgetting to ask questions.
Oh, right.
An interview is a two-way street. You're interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you.
That's such a good point. It shows that you're curious, engaged, and genuinely interested.
Exactly. So come prepared with some thoughtful questions about the company, the team, the work itself.
Okay, make a list. Write them down.
Exactly. And finally, whatever you do, avoid bad-mouthing previous employers or colleagues.
Right, negativity is never a good look.
Exactly. Even if you had a terrible experience, try to focus on the positive. What did you learn? How have you grown?
It's about showing that you're professional, resilient, and able to move forward. Okay, those are all really good tips.
Now, before we move on to our last part, I want to talk about logistics.
Logistics, as in like remembering to show up on time.
Well, yes, but also thinking about the practical aspects that can really affect your mindset going in.
Okay, so we've got our outfit picked out, we've practiced our answers. What else should we be thinking about?
Do you know where you're going? Have you scoped out the building, the parking situation?
Oh, right. Don't want to be circling the block 5 minutes before your interview.
Exactly. The last thing you need is that added stress. And speaking of stress, let's talk about what you're going to wear.
Okay, so what's the dress code for leather laboratory technician? Are we talking lab coats and goggles?
Well, it might not be quite that formal, but you still want to look professional. You want to feel confident and put together.
So maybe skip the ripped jeans and band t-shirt.
Probably a good call. Choose an outfit that's comfortable but still polished. And don't forget the details, shoes, hair, all of that.
It's about putting your best foot forward, literally.
Exactly. Now, let's talk about something that can really take your interview prep to the next level, RoleCatcher's virtual mock interviews.
Okay, tell me more.
This feature is amazing. It's like having a dress rehearsal for your interview, but with AI-powered avatars that simulate real-life interview scenarios.
So you can practice your answers, get comfortable talking about your experience, all in a safe space.
Exactly. And the best part is, the AI gives you feedback. It analyzes your answers, your delivery, even your body language.
Whoa, it's like having a personal interview coach right there on your computer. That's amazing. Now, I know we've touched on this throughout the episode, but I want to circle back to RoleCatcher one last time. For our listeners who are out there job searching, how can RoleCatcher help them stand out from the crowd?
RoleCatcher is like having a secret weapon in your job-seeking arsenal. Their platform is designed to empower you at every stage. building a killer CV, acing those interviews, even figuring out your long-term career goals.
It's like having a personal career coach in your pocket.
Exactly. Their CV builder helps you create a CV that not only looks good, but is also optimized for those applicant tracking systems that everyone's using these days.
Because in today's job market, it's not enough to just have a CV. It needs to be able to get past the robots.
Exactly. And then once you land that interview, RoleCatcher's got your back with all those prep tools. Company research, salary data, sample questions, AI feedback, they've got it all.
That's like they thought of everything. And they even help with career development.
You do. Their Career Compass feature is amazing for exploring different career paths within the industry. Maybe you want to specialize in a specific type of leather testing, or maybe you're thinking about moving into management.
It's like having a roadmap for your career. I love that. Okay, so we've talked about the challenges, the rewards, the skills, the resources. What are some common mistakes that people make during these interviews? Let's help our listeners avoid those pitfalls.
One of the biggest ones I see is people not being prepared to answer questions about their salary expectations. It's one of those tricky questions that can really throw you off if you're not ready for it.
Right, because you don't want to undervalue yourself, but you also don't want to price yourself out of the running. So how do you find that balance?
Research is key. Before your interview, take the time to research salary ranges for similar roles in your geographic location, taking into account your experience level, education, and any specialized skills or certifications you may have. Knowing your worth is crucial in these situations.
That makes sense. What else should people avoid doing?
Another common mistake is not asking any questions of their own. Remember, an interview is a two-way street. It's an opportunity for you to learn more about the company and the role, just as much as it's an opportunity for them to learn about you.
It's like going on a date. You wouldn't just sit there and let the other person do all the talking, would you?
Exactly.
You want to show them that you're interested, that you're engaged, and that you've taken the time to think about how you could fit into their company culture.
Exactly. And finally, and this should go without saying, but avoid speaking negatively about previous employers or colleagues.
Right. Negativity is never a good look, especially in an interview.
Exactly. Even if you had a negative experience, try to frame it in a positive light. What did you learn from that experience? How have you grown?
It's all about showing that you're a team player and that you can handle challenges in a professional and mature way.
Exactly. Now, let's shift gears for a moment and talk about something that often gets overlooked. Logistics.
Logistics. Like making sure you know how to get to the interview.
Well, yes, that's part of it. But it's also about thinking about all the little details that can help you feel more prepared and confident on the day of your interview.
Okay, so we've talked about researching the company, practicing our answers, and even planning our outfits. What other logistics should we be thinking about?
Well, first and foremost, make sure you know exactly where you're going and how long it will take you to get there. Factor in traffic, parking, and any other potential delays.
Right, the last thing you want is to show up late and flustered because you couldn't find the parking lot.
Exactly. And while we're on the topic of first impressions, let's talk about attire.
Okay, so what's the dress code for a leather laboratory technician interview? Is it business casual, formal?
It's always best to err on the side of caution and dress professionally. You want to make a good first impression, and that starts with looking the part.
So maybe skip the jeans and t-shirt.
Probably a good idea. A nice pair of slacks or a skirt, a button-down shirt or blouse, and a blazer if you have one is always a good choice. And make sure your shoes are clean and polished.
Right. The details matter. And what about hair and makeup? Any tips?
Keep it simple and professional. You want to look polished and put together, but you don't want to look like you're going to a gala. And for those who wear makeup, stick to neutral tones.
Great advice. Now, I know we've thrown a lot of information at our listeners today, so before we wrap up this section, let's talk about a tool that can really help them practice their interview skills. RoleCatcher's virtual mock interviews.
This feature is a game changer. It allows you to practice your interview skills in a safe and supportive environment, using AI-powered avatars that simulate real-life interview scenarios.
So it's like having a practice run before the big day.
Exactly. You can choose from a library of industry-specific questions or even input your own custom questions. And the best part is, the AI provides feedback on your answers, your delivery, even your body language.
Whoa, it's like having a personal interview coach right there on your computer.
Exactly. It's an amazing tool for anyone who wants to build their confidence and refine their interview skills.
That's incredible. Now, I know we've mentioned RoleCatcher throughout this episode, but for our listeners who are just tuning in, can you remind us how RoleCatcher can help them in their job search?
Absolutely. RoleCatcher is like having a personal career assistant in your pocket. Their platform is designed to help you at every stage of your career journey, from creating a standout CV to acing your interviews to even mapping out your long-term career goals.
So it's not just about finding a job. It's about finding the right job for you and then thriving in that role.
Exactly. Their CV Builder helps you create a CV that not only looks good, but is also optimized for those applicant tracking systems that so many companies are using these days.
Right, because it's not enough to just have a great CV. It needs to be able to get past the bots.
Precisely. And then, once you land that interview, RoleCatcher has your back with all those interview prep tools we've been talking about. Company research, salary data, sample questions, AI feedback. They've got it all.
It's like they've thought of everything.
No.
And let's not forget about their career development resources.
Absolutely. Their Career Compass feature is a game changer for anyone who wants to explore different career paths, identify areas for growth, or even connect with mentors and industry leaders.
It's like having a roadmap for your career.
Exactly. Whether you're just starting out in your career or you're a seasoned professional looking for a change, RoleCatcher can help you achieve your goals.
Well, on that note, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll wrap up this episode with some final thoughts on how to approach your leather laboratory technician interview with confidence and authenticity. Okay, we are back, ready to really nail this interview stuff.
Let's do it. I think it's easy to get caught up in trying to impress the interviewers, But remember what I said earlier, it's a two-way street.
Oh, right, it's not just about them deciding if they like you. It's about you deciding if you like them too. Makes sense.
Exactly. Use this as a chance to really see if this company is the right fit for your leather-loving heart.
Okay, so, what kind of questions should people be asking?
Don't be afraid to dig a little deeper into their values. Ask about their sustainability practices, how they're innovating in leather processing, what their approach to quality control is.
Those are really good.
Yeah.
Because you can learn a lot about a company by how they answer those questions.
Exactly. It shows them you're not just there for any job. You're there because you care about leather.
Right. You want to be somewhere that aligns with your values.
Yeah.
Okay. Last question for you. Picture this. It's a year from now. You ace that interview. You're knee-deep in the lab, loving your job. What's your biggest accomplishment so far?
Oh, I love that question. For me, it would be discovering a new testing method that makes the process even more eco-friendly.
That's awesome. You'd be like a leather superhero.
I'll take it. But really, it could be anything. That's the amazing thing about this field. The possibilities are endless.
So true. Well, on that inspiring note, I think it's time for us to wrap things up. To all our listeners out there, good luck with those interviews. Remember, the world of leather is waiting for you.
You've got this.